Right. Welcome, welcome, friends. On this day after the full moon. So we're gonna get into this beautiful time of year. And I welcome everybody. And I'm wondering if somebody has thought like, okay, today is going to be my day to read the calendar of the soul.
I can read it.
Thank you, Jerome. Please do.
My power of thought grows firm, united with the spirit's birth. It lifts the senses' dull attractions to bright lit clarity. When soul abundance desires union with the world's becoming, must senses revelation receive the light of thinking.
Receive the light of thinking. I saw Nancy lit her candle and that reminded me to light mine. There we go.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Related to the calendar of the soul. I have a couple, there's so many translations. It's unbelievable how many translations is possible. And this translation or your experience with different translations, a short comment about,
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I have one of those compilations that has 7 different translations, and I love that. And personally, I love the push translation. That's the one that we're reading here. That's kind of the most common in English. But it's really fun. We have another study group that I do on Wednesdays. And there's a woman there who likes to take those 7 different versions of it and make her own. And I often do that with some of the verses and such from Rudolf Steiner. It's really fun to do that. I mean, if you can't read the German, obviously if you go to the German and do your own translation, that's kind of a cool thing to do as well. But to do this where you really have to think about it and put it into your own words and find the words that really speak to you. Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Can I say something?
Sure.
So since my mother tongue is German, for me, it's always interesting to read the different translations because I do understand the German better. Because sometimes I read the German verse and it doesn't make sense to me. So it's interesting, those different translations. It's like somebody has already digested a little bit something.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
that's just my comment.
Yeah, like the mother bird chewing it up for us a little bit. All right, getting that frog out of my throat. Well, yes, as I said, welcome, welcome, friends. Today is a special day. It's always a special day, isn't it? But today, we're celebrating Tu B'Shvat, which is the new year for the tree. And this occurs every year with the full quickening moon of February. So we're in this cross quarter time, right, between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. And we've talked about that a little bit. And we're deepening this relationship that we have with this time of year. And I think we've mentioned, yeah, maybe you're feeling it. This is when the sap really begins to rise. So in the Jewish mystical tradition, those who practice the Kabbalistic teachings, actually the Rosicrucian teachings, which Anthroposophy comes from, uses these Kabbalistic attributes as well. This idea of this glyph of the tree as a metaphor to understand the relationship between the spiritual and the physical worlds. So we've been doing our own work, haven't we, with our own tree and trying to develop our relationship with that as well. So we can also know that spiritual science tells us that the human being is a reversed plant. So this is something interesting to think about, that the head is actually our root. It's the oldest part, right? It's this, where the higher spiritual realms, that's where the roots come from our thinking, from the spiritual worlds. And this now resides in the earth as the fruit taking up the fruit of the sacrifice of the cosmic Christ. Right? So this I am impulse must ultimately manifest its influence through the, the branches and the leaves, our limb system, right, which moves out into our deeds in the world. And then, of course, our middle realm, our heart and our lungs, pulling in this essence from the periphery, this Christ etheric essence into our thinking, feeling, and willing. So this idea of the human being, this reversal kind of a thing, a whole study to contemplate. But for today, we're going to really think about that, how in the, relatively not that long ago, the 16th century, we start to see this Kabbalistic Tu B'Shvat Seder. So it's similar to the Seder for Passover. And so the custom for this, I like to call it a Jewish Arbor Day. It's not only to plant a tree, but to eat fruits from what are called the 7 species, the gifts of the tree. Now, we worked a little bit with these numbers, 7 and 12, right? So these 7 species, and we're going to hear what those are, represent, you guessed it, the 7 planetary spheres, right? Referred to in, we have this verse from Deuteronomy, which refers to these 7 species coming from, quote, a land of wheat and barley and grapevines and fig trees, pomegranates, a land of olive trees and date honey. So that's a beautiful image right there from the Bible. And Nancy and I thought it would be fun to attempt to enact a cyber Seder. I don't know if this has ever been done. Maybe it has in our day and age, but we're going to just have to really use our cognitive imagination to imagine the texture, the taste, the smell of these various fruits from the tree of life. And so, yeah, our little online feast, maybe it'll be a primer so that you can, it'll give you the inspiration to make your own festival for the new year of the tree with your family at home. So here is what you will need. So besides these 7 species, which are figs, dates, pomegranates, olives, grapes or raisins, wheat and barley, so that's the 7. And then you can gather at least 5 other fruits and nuts to make 12. And of course, you can go crazy, and there's so many to choose from in our day and age, right? But yeah, we also want to just have this imagination of the 12 representing the zodiac. So yeah, again, this theme of space and time. And there it is right there on our dinner plate. So I like that, making it practical, right? So you'll want to have a various amount of nuts with shells. So almonds in the shell, walnuts, pistachios, coconut, right? Fruits with peels, so oranges, pomegranates, avocados. Then you want fruits with inedible pits, peaches, plums, cherries, and then fruits with edible seeds, like blueberries, apples, pears, strawberries. So you see, we're going to talk about what these different categories of fruits with shells, with skins, with pits, with edible seeds, what that really represents in the spiritual world. So that's part of what we're doing here. But we also want to have grape juice, both white grape juice and red grape juice. And it's traditional to have on the Seder table a charity box. So tzedakah is what it's called. And so, this idea of sharing the bounty. So I'm just going to turn off this screen share here, and Nancy and I are going to have a little fun making our online Seder. And of course, you can't really have a Seder without a question. So we're going to begin our Seder by asking why. It's always a good way to start. Why do we celebrate the new year for the tree on Tu B'Shvat? And by the way, Tu B'Shvat actually, it means the 15th of February. So this is, as we've talked about, this promise of spring is in the air, the sap is starting to rise, and folks are starting to plan for the harvest seasons.
Okay, so do you want to begin then, Hazel?
Yeah, please do.
Let's see.
So we've
Since
had-
the temple, with that, yeah.
Yeah.
Since the temple was destroyed, farmers could no longer bring the first fruits as an offering. So on Tu B'Shvat, we offer the fruit of our lips in praise for all the fruit trees of the world.
So Tu B'Shvat also marks, as I mentioned, this new period for giving tithes. So a portion of what we have, the abundance that we have to give it to the poor, right? It's a reminder that when a person is privileged to eat in the presence of love, right? This, idea of the family dinner. We're really called to show appreciation by giving charity to the poor, by feeding them, just as the source in her bounty feeds us.
Tu B'Shvat is the new year for the tree, singular. This reference to a single tree alludes to the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden.
So we can, I invite you to just picture yourself sitting at the celestial table, right, in the Garden of Eden before the fall. What was that like to be a human being before creation, really? And being in this divine presence, being completely filled with this divine presence, experiencing our sublime spiritual relationship with the creator beings of the highest hierarchies.
Yet we must remember that humanity's name, Adam, is derived from the word earth, Adama, and Eve means a living being. While humanity is at once the pinnacle of creation, we are also dependent on the earth for our physical needs. The Bible refers to the human being as the roots of the tree of the field, a reference, I think, to Steiner's impulse to see the human being as upside down, that the roots of the plant are akin to the hardness of our head and so forth. Our sages learned from this a prohibition against any needless destruction. In other words, fruit trees serve as an archetype for our relationship, our responsibility for our environment. And it's through a mistake of eating unripe fruit that caused Adam and Eve's exile from the Garden of Eden. The Seder of Tu B'Shvat is our opportunity to rectify this original mistake so that we can become stewards and renew the garden.
Yeah. So this picture of Adam and Eve, that by eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil too soon, it created consequences, which we're still feeling, right? And to get back to wholeness, we eat our fruit today with a conscious intention for unity and healing for the tree of life that we all share.
The Kabbalistic teachers say each life form, especially fruit, is entrusted to a specific angel. By saying a blessing over food, we empower the angelic and the elemental beings connected to it, and to bless and reproduce more good fruit. When we eat without saying a blessing, we're considered a thief. Why? Because every aspect of creation is inherently holy. A blessing reinfuses the world with reverence.
And there's this little story that I heard the other day. So this holy man, he goes to visit the house of the baker, the town baker. And so he starts dancing in front of the dinner table. He's dancing, he's into it. About an hour goes by, and the baker, not wanting to be rude, could you explain what's going on? What is this unusual custom? And the holy man replied, before I taste physical food, I absorb the food's spiritual essence. In doing so, I become so excited that I sing and dance. I love that.
I do too. Everything in the physical world is a metaphor for a deeper spiritual concept.
So eating is to the body as knowledge is to the soul. Right? What we eat, we internalize the good part of the food, and through that we grow and develop. Steiner actually has a whole series of lectures on nutrition, which it's quite interesting. But in a similar way, when we learn a new piece of information, for instance, we have to chew it over, don't we? We have to digest it. We have to integrate it into our very being. And only then can we truly grow in wisdom and spirituality.
Now comes the part where we drink the fruit of the vine and enjoy the other delicacies. Wheat and barley are the first two of the 7.
So before saying the blessing, everybody has their own blessing that they like to do over the bread. We can always just, that idea of the blessing, it's a prayer, it's a thank you note to the creator beings. It's a time to pause and reflect on our good fortune. So important, right? We don't want to be thieves. The sages say, who is the wealthy person? The one who is happy with what they have. Right? So the more that we appreciate our gifts, the more sincere our thanks can be, right? And the more sublime our pleasure is. And then when we recite the blessing over the bread, it really means something.
And then we savor each bite of cake or bread and appreciate that the divine loves us and has created everything for our good. And the divine said, let the earth put forth grass, herb yielding seeds, and fruit trees bearing fruit of its kind.
Yeah. On Tu Vishvat, we eat the fruit which the divine uses to praise the earth. That's such a beautiful thought. And there's a verse that says, quote, the trees have borne their fruit. Fig tree and vine have yielded their strength. Children, be happy and rejoice.
Now, the order of eating is important. We start with olives, dates, grapes, figs, and pomegranates.
So we take each fruit one by one to enjoy the many unique flavors and textures. We always eat too fast, don't we? I know I do. Can we take our time and just wow, the difference between a grape and a fig and an olive, and the salty, the sweet, but they all have these pits, right? So we're reflecting on the reality that the creator of time and space wants us to take our time, wants to give us health and pleasure in everything in the world.
Olives. The divine has called your name a green olive tree, beautiful is its fruit. Your children should be like olive shoots around your table. That's from the 12th Psalm. And the sages taught, just as olive oil brings light into the world, so do people bring light into the world. And so it may be.
Dates. So we go to later on in Psalms, which says, don't you love the book of Psalm? It's so beautiful. That and the Song of Songs, my favorite. This one, the righteous are fruitful and sweet and shall flourish like a date palm. Now, I don't know if you know, but the date tree, nothing is wasted. The dates, so good, they're so good for eating, right? The branches are for waving in praise. The dried thatch is for roofing. The fibers can be made into rope. The leaves for sieves. The trunk is for house beams. So we can make a comparison and see that it's just like every human being. Every human being is needed and valued, every part.
Grapes. Just as a vine has large and small clusters, and the large ones hang lower, so too the people. Whoever labors for wisdom brings sweetness close to the earth.
Starting to get hungry now. Figs. Yeah, fig. Such a beautiful image of the divine feminine, don't you think? Yeah. And you know, doing the work of you know, getting to know Anthroposophy and the work of spiritual science, it can be compared to tending a fruit tree. Whoever tends a fig tree will eat of its fruit. And that's from Proverbs. So figs, I don't know if you notice, I mean, I certainly haven't, I don't have firsthand knowledge, but you would think they don't all ripen at once, right? Some are ripe today, some ripe tomorrow. Therefore, the longer we search in the tree, the more figs that we'll find. So it's the same with our spiritual research. The more that we practice, the more knowledge and wisdom we can bring to the world.
That has such reverberance for me. Based on last week in our breakout session, we came to this wonderful feeling that living with the question is such a beautiful place to practice. Just living with the question and constantly working that question. But here we go on to pomegranates. Let us get up early to the fields. Let us see if the tree has flowered, if the pomegranates have budded. There I will give you my love, which is like the many seeds of its fruit.
Yeah, pomegranate is such a powerful image of Persephone, right? That power of initiation. So I wanted to bring this picture up. It's pretty detailed and complicated, but you can see that there's these 4 levels to this glyph of the tree of life. And at the Tu B'Shvat Seder, it's traditional to drink 4 cups of grape juice, very similar to the Passover feast. And each one of these corresponds to these 4 spiritual realms. So we get the highest, you know, up there, Kether at the crown, to the lowest, Malkuth, which is the earth. So the first cup is a cup of white grape juice. So this represents the archetypal world. It's upper Devachan in our terminology. And then the second cup, we have the white with a drop of red. So there's a little bit of mixing here. This is what we call the creative world. So something's shifting and changing, right? This is the astral realm. And then the third cup, darker pink. So more of this red is added. And this brings in the formative forces. This is the etheric realm. And then the fourth cup, almost totally red. There's only a drop of the white, a drop of that pure spiritual archetypal world in the physical earthly realm. And this is the active world where we live. So interesting how these things that we can do can become so symbolic, and then it really makes our intention come alive with this awareness of our connection between the above and below. So we could do a whole series of talks around this particular glyph, but I wanted to just put that in for today. Go on.
The white grape juice represents nature in its spiritual potential. Red grapes represent nature in full bloom. On this day, we leave the winter behind and move into a period of renewal leading to the fullness of life. As we progress from white to red, we move from potential into actuality. We are able to appreciate the divine discernment as well as our growing physical vitality. We see the divine design and goodness in the world with increasing clarity.
So when a farmer plants a seed, Gloria, tell me if I'm wrong. We have to trust not only in our own skills, but we trust in the divine. We trust in the divine that lives in that seed, right? That gives them the strength to survive the winter. And on Tu B'Shvat, we really begin to see that trust rewarded. So also when we plant a seed for our spiritual growth, it requires trust and patience to survive that dark time before we see the fruits of our labor.
So now in our imagination, we eat fruits from the realm closest to the earth. Those with inedible seeds or peels, for example, nuts, pomegranates, oranges, avocado. The edible part of the fruit corresponds to perfection and purity, while the inedible is connected to the impurities that we need to slough off. And this is parallel to the world which is enveloped by materialism, just as the fruit is enveloped in its peel or shell.
Such a beautiful image, a way to think about it. Yeah, and we can compare ourselves as human beings to a batch of walnuts, right? You know, you ever try to stack those up? You know, if you just take one away, the whole pile, it gets shaken and disturbed. And so it is that when a single person is in distress, every other person is affected. This is something we're going to grow into as we move toward the sixth cultural epoch.
So, as you toss away the peels and the shells, see one of your bad character traits, anger, impatience, whatever it is for you, being tossed away. In your mind's eye, picture the bad trait as the shell. Then as you compost it, feel the trait leaving you. That's not the real you. The real you is fruit, delicious and nourishing. See that trait going into the compost to be transformed. Release that energy and create a fertile loom for your true fruit.
So I hope you're not too full, because we're now going to eat the fruits with the inedible pits. For example, dates, olives, peaches, plums, cherries. Oh, they all sound so good. So this stage is really comparable to the realm of the formative forces, like we said. So the edible parts of the fruit represent the divine in us. And the pits represent that more material aspect, which have penetrated our wholeness. So just like that image with the glasses of grape juice, right? The color of the juice starts to get darker, but we can start to see potential turn into reality, right? So that inedible part has now moved from the outside to the inside of the fruit. So this is really an advancement toward purity. It's this idea that in addition, the inedible part is no longer waste. We don't throw it away. It's a seed with potential to grow.
Imagine that one of your bad traits is this pit. Really hold on to that. And then see that trait growing and developing into something useful. We do this. We turn our faults into our assets. You can turn the pits into seeds for future.
Good. Yeah, we're working it here. And now we get to eat the fruits that are completely edible, like blueberries, right? You don't have to throw anything away. The kiwi, you can even eat that furry part on the outside, right? This is the realm of the creative or astral forces, the starry worlds. Things are really coming close to their full potential. Even the seeds are available and edible right now. It's not only about this future potential, but they're also delicious and you can eat them in the moment. So we could think about an area in our lives that we would like to improve. I picture that ideal self, that perfect fruit, and realize, yeah, that's your true you. Know that you're already there.
Now we taste the fruit on the table with the best fragrance. This is comparable to the realm of pure spirit, where our higher self and our I originate, just as fragrance has almost no physicality. Yeah, the fragrant apple is described as the primary fruit of a majestic tree. So on Tu B'Shvat, it is fitting to pray for a beautiful apple harvest come fall.
Right. So we're really looking toward the future here. But this idea of smell, right? It holds so much for us. It really is the purest and most elevated of the five senses, at least. And we could think about how through the nose, the creator invested the human being with a soul, like it says in Genesis. The divine breathed into them the breath of life.
Eating the 12 fruits is significant since this corresponds to the 12 constellations of the zodiac. And upon eating the 12th fruit, one recites this verse from Isaiah. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, nor shall they learn war anymore. But they shall sit each person under his fig tree, and none of them, and none shall make them afraid, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken.
Such a great quote. Yeah. So after,
There's beautiful music from that.
oh, I bet. Yeah. So we can really take that to heart, can't we? You know, these metaphors for tilling and being creative in the world, and these wonderful gifts from the tree of life. And so when we can complete this process of conscious eating, right? We can be thankful to the creator beings, and we can really redeem that first original eating of the unripe fruit. And then, of course, you know, we can spend the rest of the day singing and dancing, which I hope you're going to do after our call. And then, you know, in the evening, you know, maybe it's up to you to serve the poor as well.
We've only touched the surface of the true meaning of this relatively modern holiday that we can make ever new by contemplating it or practicing it ourselves. This is the beauty of the cycle of the year. With each turn of the wheel, we have another opportunity to get to the ever deepening core of our humanity.
So I'm sure you have heard this beautiful line, behold the land flowing with milk and honey. So I thought, you know, it might be kind of cool to go into the breakout rooms and, you know, think about an experience where you felt that way, you know, where your life was flowing with the sweetness of milk and honey. You know, is there a particular season where you feel that, or a time in your life where you just really felt like you were in the flow and you were able to really receive all the gifts from the tree of life, make the best of everything. So I thought maybe we could bring this beautiful sweetness into our breakout rooms and contemplate that. Does that make sense to everybody? Good. All right, so ready or not, here we go. Welcome back from the land of milk and honey, friends.
Thank you for drawing us back, Hazel.
So what do you think? Do we want to discuss, or do we want to do a little spiraling? What are people feeling right now?
I'm always excited for a spiral. I think those are amazing.
Nancy, why don't you step up and help us with that?
Okay, you will need our trusty piece of paper. And again, 2 colors of, you know, crayon, marker, pencil, whichever. Now, I'll give you time. Oh, and somebody had asked in the chat, what was I reading from? And my chat, I can't send to anyone. So I'm going to tell you while you're finding your paper. Hazel had typed up our conversation, and I was simply reading from my part to participate in the conversation. Hazel had crafted that based on the process of the ritual. And we thought we would take, like we do in the Steiner schools, take us through the process. We're not doing the ritual, we're thinking about the ritual, we're thinking about it, we're investigating and thinking through the process. It's very different than actually doing it, which you are free to do yourselves later. So I have 2 colors. Looks like pretty much everybody is back. Gloria, there you are. So last week, from the outside, there we are. There's Linda. Last week, from the outside, we took a point and drew in as a spiral, paused, changed colors, and came out again. Now today we're going to just flip that experience, and with this imagination. So I would take a blue, if you have it. I have a blue and red, or blue and orange, or what I've got. So I'm taking my blue, and I'm going to start in the middle and come out with my spiral, and have the imagination of the seed that is inedible, the one that we're going to transform. And as you go out, find that seed swelling, growing, becoming the full fruit through the process of the tree, perhaps, all the way to fruit, till you get to the outside of the spiral and you're in this fullness of the fruit stage. And you've transformed this seed that you wish to just transform. And maybe this fruit is a beautiful new version of what was a character trait that you wanted to discard and you've managed to change. Then switch colors. Take a moment to be there in that outside fruity edge, and then reverse and come back in all the way to the center. And you will find yourself where you started, in a totally new place. See how that feels. I'll leave you to do it.
The sound of the pencil as it's making the spiral is like a wave, like whoosh. It's really singing to me today. If anybody wants to talk about their time in the breakout rooms or show their spiral, we can share. Beautiful. I love the red and the blue too. It's just always so evocative.
It is. One could color this, of course. One could cut, if you wanted to, you could turn this into an apple or a peach or a plum or a pear or a fruit or a fig. Our astral ability to turn things into something else as we choose, but or you could just leave it as your spiral.
I wanted to make a comment about the phrase that Hazel used, a cyber Seder. Now I don't know if I've never heard that used, and I don't know if she ever heard it used, but it was such a beautiful example of bringing together 2 sort of polar opposites. Something with an ancient tradition, the Seder, and cyber, more contemporary. two, in a way, animals that would not really be in the same room, but you brought them together in such a wonderful, delicious way. And marrying these two opposites, I just think it's a wonderful phrase of reconciliation, as well as what it represents. Yeah.
Thank you for getting into it. Yeah. Always an experiment. Were people able to access this idea of the land of milk and honey? It's such an evocative phrase, and it could be kind of abstract too. I'm wondering if people could relate to it at all.
Oh, we did. We had a wonderful time with it. Although I must admit, when you first proposed it, I had a complete blank. I really was thinking I can concentrate on the things that aren't quite working in milk and honey form. But both of us came up with these moments in community where both of us had a function, felt really strongly supported, and also able to work into the community, Gloria, to make things happen, to be an expediter of things that needed to happen at that time, no matter how profoundly difficult or impossible. Just all of a sudden, through her work, became fruitful and possible, and solving problems. And me, at the birth of my firstborn son, just sitting there feeling, all these friends visiting me, and my parents are in town, and then my in-laws were coming soon, and just being supported, part of this beautiful community of family and friends, having brought another one into the world to be part of this legion of people, and literally flowing with milk. I mean, it was a sort of a funny moment when I realized, oh, right.
Perfect example. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, the harvest time. Oh, look at Verlin made it spiral active.
Ooh, yeah.
Those scissors come in handy. Yeah, it's interesting to be able to think about these times of abundance when one of the other names besides the quickening moon for this February moon is the hunger moon, or the starvation moon, or the snow moon. So this is a very tender time, right before the milk starts to flow, and right before after all the root vegetables have been eaten, it could really, there could be another freeze, and it's a very dangerous time. Those beautiful almond blossoms that some of us have seen, they could be blown right off with a big gust of wind, or a deep freeze could come. So, to really, be in those moments where we can appreciate where we are. I've always related to this time of year, though, because I love the feeling of potential. I love the feeling of anything is possible at this point.
Yeah, who's our beekeeper? I'm feeling like I want to know how the bees are doing.
Right, Neelima mentioned that last week.
Yeah.
It's the tender time. Yep, that's right. Yeah.
Well, I have hens, and I can tell you that they're very happy and they're laying. I don't have bees, but I do have hens.
Yeah, it's a hard time for them, right? Because they don't really have the light and the warmth that they need to lay as much as they do in the other seasons, huh?
They do have warmth. Their chickens have down, yes. And they group together, so they keep each other warm. And I also do, if you let the inside of the coop continue to process, right, compost, that creates heat, which keeps them warm. And the sun now is rising a little bit earlier, but setting later so that they have enough stimulation on their pituitary. They've been laying for about a month now. Yeah. Those wonderful little gifts of sunshine, right? Crack them open and there's still a sun and shine.
I got a double yolk this morning. I thought,
Oh.
ooh, wonderful. It's Thursday. I'm going into this meeting. Double yolk day.
Yeah.
Here in California, we have a special blossom in our ecosystem called the Manzanita.
Ooh.
It's Spanish for little apple. And it has the amazing quality of being the first one in our ecosystem to bloom every year in the natural ecosystem. And so it's the first sugar that is available to the ants and to the insects. And it puts out a lot of sugar, but it doesn't pollinate very easily. The only way that it can pollinate is for the bees to come in there, and they have to sing exactly the tone of middle C. It's a buzz pollination. And so my grandson and I were out there the other day trying to listen to see, is the bee actually singing middle C? And it seemed like it was. So it's a really beautiful little flower, and it's very precious to me.
That is amazing. I love it. I absolutely love it.
I would like just to remind us of strawberries. You know, of all the fruits, it's the only fruit with the seeds on the outside. And we think of seed as internal and it's being protected like the shell and the hull. But the strawberry is the one fruit where, wow, bold and courageous. The seeds are on the outside. And not to get too metaphoric, but in terms of anthroposophy and how can we individuals be witness to anthroposophy in the world? How can we wear the seeds on the outside, you know, without being ostentatious, without talking about it, when no one asked us about it, but how can we be strawberries with seeds on the outside and bear witness in an appropriate manner? Yeah.
I want to comment on that, Jerome. That's so nice. Ernst Katz once told a story about how he wanted to spread anthroposophy, but he didn't want to like talk it up. So he put a picture of Rudolf Steiner right by his door, front door, coming inside, you know. As you were leaving, you would see that picture. Everyone would see that picture. And somebody would say to him, "Oh, who is that? Is that a family member?" And that would be the opening for the conversation about anthroposophy. It sat there for years and nobody ever asked that question. And then Hitler rose to power, started making noise, and he emigrated to the United States and became a teacher of physics at Ann Arbor. And he received a letter from the woman who'd been their housekeeper for years. And she wrote to him and she said, "Dear Dr. Katz, I've discovered this wonderful, wonderful thing that I really want to share with you. You probably haven't heard of it. It's called anthroposophy." And he was like, so then he said, "I think I've learned to answer people's unasked questions." Because, you know, it's like, so he was a little more bold. If I had only said something 15 years earlier, she would have had a jump on it. But anyway. So maybe wearing our seeds on the outside a little more visibly is a good idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe, but maybe she wasn't ready for it 15 years earlier.
Well, karma is karma. It happened the way it happened. But anyway.
Yeah.
But he took it as a lesson for himself that he should be more explicit about anthroposophy and really, you know, offer it up a little bit more outwardly.
That image of, you know, Johnny Appleseed is a beautiful one too. I mean, that we just kind of broadcast them and then they land where they should. So, yeah.
Ooh, and an interesting thing about apples that most people probably know, but I'm offering it in case you don't, is that they do not come true from seed ever. You will never get a lady apple from a lady apple. It will always, it has such incredible power to transform that you will always get a different apple. So the only way you continually get the same kind of apple is to graft. That's it. So the oldest apple, they figure that of all the varieties around is maybe the lady apple. It's the closest to the original. It's actually, it was a Turkish, I think, plant that was originally sort of growing low to the ground that human beings have in our gardening turned into what we now eat as the apple. But, or at least that was one variety that people have found that seems to be old, but yeah, curious. Such a potent seed. It won't ever yield true. It always goes on to make something new.
Yeah, and next time we'll be talking about Lent. We'll be getting into the season of Lent, and you know, every year I always buy Easter lilies because I love the smell of an Easter lily. It's my favorite plant, and then I always plant them again, you know, and then true to like what you were saying, sometimes they come out yellow or sometimes they come out pink, and I always buy the white ones. So it's interesting that they kind of gonna do what they're gonna do, you know. It's a wonderful surprise. Well, thank you everyone for a beautiful session again this week, and yeah, we're gonna go deep and wide again next time. So hopefully someone who hasn't read the verse will volunteer for next week, and we'll see you then. Blessings and peace.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Much.
everyone.
Thank you.
A wonderful day.
Nancy,
you.
actually, apples are originally from Kazakhstan, and
Kazakhstan.
They do
Yes.
grow from seed, and they're being almost eradicated. They're being chopped down. I think it's Cornell University. Ag people are going over and collecting as many as they can before it's all demolished.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Thank you for adding that, because I just know, you know, from my limited reading what I knew, but Kazakhstan, that's right. And yeah, there's so many different varieties of apples that, I mean, I was amazed to learn that there was a creeping kind versus the tall kind. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank
Right,
you.
sure. Yeah, they're trying to keep the variety alive, you know, similar to what we're trying to do with potatoes. Yes. Potatoes grow in Central America. They're all different types, but we've just changed it and the GMOs to make just one kind, but there should be a gazillion different kinds of potatoes around.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. Cornell. I mean, what is the apple that we know that comes out of Cornell that they've developed? I'm trying to remember. Well, those beautiful Upper New York State apples.
well, there's so many beautiful apples there.
Yeah, exactly. I can't even bring them to mind. There's so many. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Everybody enjoy the fruits of life for today.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Hazel.